Hello and welcome to my review of the latest episode of Smackdown. So this was a pretty, felt like a pretty chaotic episode of Smackdown. Some of that made perfect sense. Some of it was wonderful, and maybe a bit more of it just left us kind of like scratching our heads and just felt really made at least me left wondering what the hell is going on. So to kind of like pick the bones out of this and kind of like get into the good, bad, and the ugly of this episode of SmackDown. So this episode of SmackDown kicked off where we basically had Drew McIntyre go backstage, attacking Jacob Fatu in his car. They were scheduled to have a match in this episode of SmackDown. So then Drew McIntyre comes basically to the ring like a raging bull. We basically have Nick Aldis coming out and basically going, "What the hell is wrong with you? You're the most self-sabotaging person that I know," blah blah blah. And overall, it's kind of like left to think that I'm going through all of the names until I get to the right one. Until Jacob Fatu, it's assumed that Jacob Fatu is out of action right now. So that turns out quickly not to be the case, because while basically Nick Aldis and Drew McIntyre are having their little face-off, we basically have Jacob Fatu coming back to the ring, brawling with Drew McIntyre, and this ends up being a theme just throughout this episode of SmackDown. Just for reference, Jacob Fatu and Drew McIntyre basically end up being like Peter Griffin and the Chicken throughout this entire episode of SmackDown, where they're just constantly brawling backstage from basically throughout the episode. So yeah, I thought that was a pretty fire start to this episode of SmackDown, to be honest with you. I was kind of like all down for that. So we then had the match, a tag team match between Damian Priest and R-Truth. They were taking on the MFTs for the tag team titles, and I thought that this match was alright. The most notable thing about this was that there was a little bit of a surprise in that Damian Priest and R-Truth actually picked up a win here. It felt a little bit bittersweet, right? Because basically going into this match, I couldn't really enjoy this match, right? Because basically I was going into this match basically going, well, it's nice to see the MFTs not going up against the Wyatt Six anymore. But we knew that wasn't really going to be the case, because we knew the Wyatt Six were going to get involved in this match, which is exactly what ended up happening, causing the distraction for Damian Priest and R-Truth to pick up a win here. I think it's pretty good that we have new tag team champions now. I know some people may not be on board with this, with the Damian Priest and R-Truth just being a new tag team, and there's thinking that it's kind of like this title change has felt a little bit unearned, and I would totally agree with that. But you know, at least we are getting something fresh. But yeah, like I said, this match was all right, but I couldn't really enjoy it because basically, yeah, it was just so predictable and so choreographed in terms of, yeah, we always knew that the Wyatt Six were going to get involved here, and we're going to basically just continue with this feud between the MFTs and the Wyatt Six, which feels like it's been going on longer than Roman Reigns' last reign, to be honest with you. But yeah, so yeah, we then moved on to another tag team match with Fraxian taking on the Motor City Machine Guns. This was a really solid match, really back and forth. When you got those four guys in the ring, you know that there's going to be a lot of high flying, a lot of great in ring ability here. So the match I thought was pretty solid, and I was enjoying it right up until Candice LeRae comes out, who basically intervenes. She had previously been backstage. She had previously been backstage. Gargano was basically taking his usual position of just laying face down on this box. I believe that Danhausen showed up in this segment. Basically, Candice LeRae was like, yeah, can you help him? And Danhausen goes, have you got $20? So she gives him $20. He goes, oh, lovely, thank you. And he just walks off like it's just kind of like robbed him. So we basically have Candice LeRae coming out in this match between the Motor City Machine Guns and Fraxium. She basically causes a division where she, I believe it was, it might have been Axiom that she had hit. I'm not too sure now, but I think it was. And this allowed Motor City Machine Guns to pick up the win. And in a way, I follow. I can make sense of this, right? I mean, there's a lot of it. Did feel kind of like out of left field, but I think that if we're going to basically look, I mean. I don't know what they're doing with Johnny Gargano. It seems like they're going nowhere with this character, which is all the more tragic when you think about what's going on with Ciampa at AEW. But yeah, so I can totally understand why Candice LeRae would look for a new tag team to latch onto. Although I would argue why she needs to latch onto a tag team anyway, and why can't you just insert her into women's singles? I don't know, but yeah, I think that more to the point, I think that if this was to indicate a heel turn for the Motor City Machine Guns, then that would make sense. It wouldn't mean you have a new heel tag team, seeing as you've just crowned a babyface tag team champions. So all of that kind of like makes sense. We basically had a segment with Sami Zayn backstage here. The purpose of this was basically he was essentially kind of talking about how he admires Cody Rhodes and how he always tries to do what's right, and how that's working out for him. And yet Randy Orton, he turned on Cody Rhodes, and now look what he's got. He's got this title shot. So yeah, basically we're still kind of like sprinkling the breadcrumbs here of this Sami Zayn heel turn, which we're almost definite now it is going to happen. So yeah, we basically had Randy Orton coming out to the ring to cut his promo to basically explain why he had done what he had done with Cody Rhodes. He was basically saying that he still appreciates and respects Cody Rhodes, but he basically is saying that when Cody Rhodes turned around to him and said that he needs a Viper, he needs him to start listening to the voices in his head, and not because of him or because of the fans, but because of himself. And he felt like that when Cody Rhodes said that this was basically like an epiphany to him. The crowd were most notably absolutely totally over this when Randy Orton was coming out to cheers. When Randy Orton was saying that he was going to beat Cody Rhodes for the 15th, it was met with loads of cheers. Randy Orton is totally over right now. And there is a talking point to this, and I will get to it momentarily, because we did have another segment with Randy Orton a little bit later. We had a match here between Ilya Dragunov as well, having a rematch with Carmelo Hayes, and this was solid. And like I said, there was a little bit of I felt like a little bit of a hole, because I was basically looking at this match and basically kind of like going, Didn't Ilya Dragunov say in the previous weeks that he wasn't deserving of a rematch or something like that? Oh, he wanted to win in that. But I wasn't going to complain too much because I know that Ilya Dragunov and Carmelo Hayes have great chemistry together. I think they always bring it, and this was just a solid match. This was a match of the night, so I'm not gonna complain over little quibbles. Yeah, this was a solid back and forth match that had so many 1-2s here. Yeah, this was just a real solid back and forth match. It was a great showcase for both competitors. Quite predictably, we did have Carmelo Hayes picking up a win. But at this point, I was glad that we finally had the match that was basically just followed through to a straight 1-2-3. There wasn't any distractions or interventions or confusions here, so that was nice. We had a backstage segment as well with where we basically had Speed and Penta hanging out backstage. Speed was basically asking Penta if Penta can teach him his walk and everything. They essentially run into Jelly Roll, and then we basically have Jelly Roll. It then starts talking to Randy Orton. He's done because obviously they previously had the tag team together. They have a good friendship. So Jelly Roll's trying to talk to Randy Orton and trying to veer him away from kind of the dark side here. It seems like Randy Orton is basically receptive to this, and he's like, well, what can we do? How can I kind of make it right? So we had basically had Jelly Roll then come out and cut this promo with Kit Wilson, which is another thing to send the internet, it seems, into meltdown. So basically they ended up having a poetry of basically he was that basically we had Kit Wilson essentially kind of making this poem about Jelly Roll. Here he was. I know I'm not going to be able to recite it all the word, but he essentially starts getting off by making reference to Jelly Roll's pass. He basically turns around and says that he may call Jelly Roll fatphobic, he may call him toxic, he may even call him a jerk, but at least he's proof at his Zempic works. And it basically just essentially Jelly Roll sold this beautifully. I think that there's a moment where the camera focuses on Jelly Roll as he kind of responds to this, and Jelly Roll just sells it so wonderfully. Jelly Roll just genuinely looks genuinely buttered by this. He's got that face that basically says, "How can you say these mean things to me? What did I ever do to you?" So basically, Kit Wilson proceeds basically saying that Jelly Roll looks silly, but now he's lost all the weight. At least he can see his little willy. But yeah, we basically just found the level here. So we basically had Jelly Roll's turn. Jelly Roll had basically said that. That Kit Wilson had essentially brought him out here to try and kind of give him this dressing down with his poetry, but he doesn't need to see his little willy because Kit Wilson's mum sees it for him. And it was all just basically, yeah, that was pretty much it. And I I gotta say I enjoyed this. I enjoyed the goofiness of it. I enjoyed the sort of the immaturity of it. I guess I just thought that this was ridiculous, but in the best possible way. I really did. I really, and I said before in the previous videos, I'm not a big fan of the Kit Wilson gimmick, but he's warming to me. He's warming to me. I gotta say, and yeah, so we basically then had more backstage segments between Randy Orton. He had basically been talking to this mystery person on the phone who was basically saying, no, you're right. I'm glad you called. You're absolutely right. I'm going to go out there now and make it right. We had so he basically comes out to the ring and calls out Macadona. He had essentially earlier in the episode he had this backstage segment with Macadona where where Macadona likewise, just like Jelly Roll, had basically tried to talk to him about his turn on Cody Rhodes. Randy Orton wasn't as receptive as he was to Jelly Roll. Obviously they don't share the same relationship, so Randy Orton basically just flipped out on him and was basically saying, are you kidding me? Have you got some action figures to go away and play with, indie nerd? So he basically comes out to the ring. He says that he wants to, he owes Macadona an apology. He also owes Cody Rhodes an apology, but Cody Rhodes isn't here tonight, so he's got to wait till next week to give him his apology. So he's like, come out, Matt. So he calls Macadona out. Basically, Randy Orton is basically saying, I shouldn't have ripped on you for collecting action figures. That's cool, you know me. I'm a big fan of video games, which is true. Randy Orton is a fan of Elden Ring, so he is a gamer. But yeah, basically he's essentially, as we all kind of suspected, though, this is a ruse. He hits Cadona with an RKO. He basically then goes out to get a chair. He puts Macadona's arm in this chair. He's going to stand down on it and break his arm when the security come out, who basically live up to their rich reputation of being the worst security in the world, because basically as they kind of like form this line, there's a clear through line right through to Macadona and this chair. So basically that is essentially what happens. Randy Orton runs through the security, stamps down, breaking Macadona's arm, and the crowd react to this by chanting one more time. So it seems like Randy Orton can do, no matter how despicable Randy Orton acts, the fans are not all together turning on him. And okay, so we'll get into this a little bit now, because there has been this talking point online about if this is an issue or not, if they don't manage to basically get the audience to turn on Randy Orton, and they don't get the audience to boo Randy Orton and cheer Cody Rhodes. Personally, I don't really think that that's necessarily a problem. I really don't. I mean, I guess, this is going to be... I suppose it depends on how you view your wrestling and how you enjoy your wrestling. I personally am not somebody who really feels like it's absolutely sacred. That crowd have to treat wrestling like it's a pantomime, like they have to kind of cheer the good guy and boo the bad guy. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think that it's perfectly fine to dislike a babyface. I think it's perfectly fine to like a heel. So and I don't think that it's we've seen this with obviously Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan, who are totally over with the crowd. We've basically had people kind of like going, well, if they're totally over with the crowd, shouldn't they be turning babyface? No, I don't think that's true at all. I think that's basically if Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan's characters have gone completely over with the crowd as it stands, then I think that just means they're doing something right. I think that you need to reserve the babyface turns, the heel turns, all of that for maybe if the crowd aren't being particularly receptive to a particular wrestler. This is why I said it could maybe benefit like Austin Theory. There had been this little theory that maybe Austin Theory was a bit of a mole and he was actually aligned with Seth Rollins. I don't think that that's going to come to fruition now. Maybe it was part of a plan, and but now with the state of vision it isn't. I don't think that this is going to that's necessarily going to happen now. But yeah, basically, I do think that maybe something like Austin Theory could benefit from it. I think that he could absolutely benefit from this sort of 360 in his character. Whereas yeah, like I said, I don't think you need to do it with Randy Orton. And to bring it back to Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton, I think you can lay some breadcrumbs here as well, because there has been this speculation about maybe there's going to be a heel turn from Cody Rhodes at some point. And I think that this feud is essentially bringing that a little bit maybe closer to a reality, because I'm not saying that it's basically on the drawing board. I'm not saying they're going to pull the trigger on this, but I'm just saying that hypothetically, if they were to come out of this feud and pull the trigger on the Cody Rhodes heel turn, it would make some sort of narrative sense, because basically, Cody Rhodes could be somewhere similar to like the John Cena heel turn, where he's basically essentially turned around to fans and going, you fans are like despicable. I tried to do right all the time, and how did you repay me? You fans are just toxic. But you see all of the stuff that Randy Orton did, and you absolutely love it. So here you go. Here's what I think that you could absolutely go. I think I think a breadcrumbs are there if you wanted to do that now. Whereas I think maybe before it would have seemed too out of left field, because they've always pitched Cody Rhodes as kind of a white knight of a company. Whereas now I think you've got a bit more of a breadcrumb trail, so that if you wanted to turn Cody Rhodes heel, you could feasibly do that, and it would make more narrative sense, and it would feel more organic. So yeah, basically we had and maybe this talk about babyface turns and heel turns will kind of like lead into like what I'm going to talk about next. And this was the bit I did not like the most about this entire episode of SmackDown, because we basically had this promo between Jade Cargill and Rhea Ripley. I've agreed that this feud needs something. I haven't disliked their promos or as much as just some of the people around here, but yeah, I agree that it needs something. So we basically had this promo where basically Rhea Ripley was essentially turning around and going, we're coming out, we're talking like we can. Are we gonna do just more than talk, or are we actually going to get physical here? So 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 Jade Cargill exits the ring. She's about to walk back when she's met by Meechin and B-Fab, who are basically carrying kendo sticks. And it's basically looking, obviously, because of the history there, about to beat down Jade Cargill again. And I'm thinking, my God, why can't we just leave this? But it turns out, no, it's all a ruse, it's all a swerve. Jade Cargill, Meechin and B-Fab basically surround the ring. Meechin and B-Fab basically beat down Rhea Ripley. Jade Cargill then picks her off the leftovers. And yeah, I just didn't like this, okay? And to start with some of the good in that I can extract to this, like, I think that in light of what I just said, where maybe you could reserve the babyface heel turns or the heel turns for maybe characters that could really benefit from that. And I think that, Meech and B-Fab, I think they could benefit from it. I mean, I don't think that that's necessarily all of it. I mean, I don't think that they've been particularly utilised particularly well. They haven't really had the screen time to really show what they can do. So I think maybe that's part of it as well. But yeah, I understand that how maybe a turn in their character could add something to them. And I feel like that, as it's not exactly going to get them over with a crowd, but if Meechin and B-Fab are coming out now every week and they're getting booed, then that's kind of like better than them being kind of like meh about it, Charlotte Flair once said, they're either wooing or booing, and as long as they're doing one of the two, you're doing something right. But so and also I think, like I said, this feud needed something. And maybe a component of that is that Rhea Ripley needs to somehow look like the underdog here, because I think that everyone's just expecting Rhea Ripley to come out victorious here, and still kind of like going with that. But yeah, so you need some way to make her look like the underdog, and this kind of like does all that. So I can I can sort of somehow make sense of it. But yeah, it just did not work for me. After seeing this Jade Cargill, Meechin and B-Fab locked in this feud for like God knows how long now, ever since it became champion, maybe before now. I don't know when this feud started. It feels like it's been going on forever. Has it been going on longer than the MFTs and by its six? But if it hasn't, it can't be far off. I don't know. But it feels like another one of those feuds that's just been going on forever day. So now just seeing them kind of like align just feels maybe a little bit too out of left field. It feels like one of those kind of like Vince Russo type swerves, where it's a swerve kind of for the sake of being the swerve. And I do kind of like, while I do think that Meechin and B-Fab could maybe benefit from a heel turn in terms of their character, and we need to find a way to make Rhea Ripley look like the underdog in this. I don't understand why Jade Cargill and Meechin and B-Fab have to be always attached to the hip here. I really don't. I don't know why they are so fixated on keeping on Jade Cargill, Meechin and B-Fab being destined to kind of do this dance forever, like Batman and the Joker. I just don't understand it. So I feel like that Meechin and B-Fab, I think that they would be much better served in the women's tag team division. I feel like you could maybe build them up that way. I think, there's a lot of stuff like I don't think you necessarily need to, and I feel like I don't think when Meechin and Beef are beating down Rhea Ripley and then basically Jade Cargill then just picking the bones, I don't think that really serves it. I don't think that necessarily makes Jade Cargill look stronger anyway. I don't think it really necessarily um, quite accomplishes like. So yeah, like I said, I understand what they're maybe going for with this, but I don't think I feel like there was just maybe more effective ways you could have executed this. But also I feel like I didn't really like it just because obviously, apart from obviously, like I said, the match between Ilya Dragunov and Carmelo Hayes, we had basically interventions and distractions basically all throughout every single match here. And obviously SmackDown is 3 hours now. So I think just by this time I was just tired of the whole interventions and swerves as well. I felt like this episode of SmackDown had kind of gone back to the well too many times with us. And by the time it just got a little bit kind of tiresome and tedious. So, and yeah, like I said, when you look at all of these potential when you look at all these distractions and these swerves and stuff like that, like like I done in this video, I can kind of like theorize why they would potentially do this. So it's not like they're all completely out of left field, but it just I just think that it was there was too much of one thing. I just felt like it just didn't work for me, and yeah, so we basically ended up ending this show, going back to Jacob Fatu and Drew McIntyre, who were basically still brawling. Yes, after like 3 hours they were still brawling. I told you they were basically like Peter Griffin and the Chicken at this stage. Here they Nick Aldis and the SmackDown crew were basically running out. They had basically been stuck behind this very inconveniently placed metal fence. We saw Jacob Fatu and Drew McIntyre brawling on what looked to be like a water tower type structure. And then they basically fall off, and because of this inconveniently placed fence, we did it. That was the last we saw of them, so it could be dead. Who we know, I don't know. So yeah, like I said, in conclusion, guys, I have to give this episode of SmackDown a thumbs down. I really do. Like I said, I'm enjoying all the Jacob Fatu and Drew McIntyre stuff. I'm really enjoying the Randy Orton and the Cody Rhodes stuff. And everything else is just feeling a little bit directionless at the minute. It just feels a little bit aimless at the minute. And yeah, like I said, just for this episode of SmackDown in particular, yeah, I think there was just too many DQs and distractions and interventions in this. It just ended up getting tedious, and it ended up maybe it shouldn't have done, but it did end up kind of like affecting my enjoyment of this episode of SmackDown, I have to say. So yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. So yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, don't forget to ring a bell for notifications. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please feel free to let me know down in the comment section about what your own thoughts on this episode of SmackDown was, yeah, what maybe your own little fan theories are going forward as we continue down the road to WrestleMania. All that fun geeky stuff, let me know down in the comment section. And yeah, there's also going to be, I have to make a little bit of a disclaimer here as well, where basically from next week, I am trying to get a new YouTube channel up off the ground. Over there, it will essentially be a health and fitness vlog. That's basically been more important to me since becoming a dad. So I will basically be doing that, but I will also be moving my reviews, my wrestling reviews, over to that channel as well. So it will primarily be focused on them, but it will allow me to comment a bit more on expand on the videos I do with wrestling. So I'll be commenting on not just Raw and Smackdown, but also NXT, maybe AEW, and maybe do some more sports entertainment. Like I might do some football stuff or soccer for my American friends. So yeah, if you're basically want to continue seeing these wrestling reviews, if you're into your health and your fitness and all of that, yeah, please feel free to go over to my other YouTube channel that I'm trying to currently get up off the ground at Wellness Road. I'll leave a link to that down in the comment section, and so you can just hop over to there and subscribe and ring a bell for notifications, and you'll never miss a beat. So yeah, everyone who does that, yeah, thank you guys for doing that. I would really appreciate it. Like I said, this is a channel that I have had before, but it's kind of like falling a bit into a void. So it's time to give it a nice little revamp, and hoping that it will just allow me to bring this content to you a lot more quicker and a lot more efficiently. And yeah, so yeah, thank you. So yeah, thank you guys for your continued support, and yeah, I will see you guys on the next video. You guys take care.